Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Thanks for coming back tonight. We have a big program lined up for you. It's stacked. We'll just mention, of course, the arrest of former Prince Andrew on charges related to the Epstein files, the Epstein scandal. But that's not going to be our focus here tonight, because we have Mike Pekarek joining us to talk about Iran and especially Ukraine tonight too. And so we will be tapping into his expertise, and he will help us understand where we are at with both of those conflicts and situations, because we haven't really been talking very much about either of those stories as they have been developing in quite a number of days, nights. So it's time for an update, and we'll also touch on today's other top news stories of the day. So stay with me. We'll come right back and start digging into it on the other side of this.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity, the Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. It custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations. Proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
Okay, let's bring Mike in. Welcome back, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we need you because there has been a lot going on, major developments in Iran and on the Ukraine story too. And we need your help to understand where we're at, because so much has developed. I don't know where to begin. Do you want to begin with Iran or Ukraine tonight?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that, because it's one of those that it's so much happens over time that you can't even know where to begin. Ukraine is more, both of them are even more the same level of urgent, but Ukraine's been going on longer. Do you want to start with Iran?
Let's start with Iran, because I think that is the story that is sort of topping headlines right now. And so I know that we have this major military buildup. Just before we went to air, I saw headlines with quotes from Donald Trump. I believe they had a board of peace meeting today.
Oh, the Gaza Strip thing. Yeah.
And so while there, he made some comment now about how we'll find out what's going to happen in Iran over the next 10 days or so, even though we've been hearing for the last 24 hours that some sort of attack on Iran could happen as early as this weekend. So we're all still guessing. And what is your take on that?
Well, trying to predict Donald Trump is always an interesting game, not necessarily because he plays this game of unpredictability. It's that I don't think he knows sometimes where he's going to go or when. The timing, though, that people are looking at this, looking at what we've deployed to the region, the situation in terms of oil price and delivery and how much oil's in the system currently, the global system is what I mean, or just any number of other factors would suggest that if Trump's going to go, he's going to go soon. And yes, as early as this weekend is a possibility. I don't know if they have any more assets in the area. I haven't seen, so like before Venezuela, I saw some news reports that the United States has some very high-tech and very effective airborne signals intelligence would be one way of calling it. ISR is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. It's a more broad category, but we have some ISR aircraft that started doing regular flights very close to Venezuela. And for me, that was, it's going to happen soon. And it was like a day or two before. The reason for that is before you actually go in militarily, you know, whether you agree with the military situation or not, if you're a competent military, you want to do it right. And so before you go, you want to know where all of the doors are, if you can, what's behind each door. And in the American military parlance, sometimes we talk about things that kick doors in. So the F-35 is one of the current things that's one of our big door kickers. But for the F-35 to be effective, you have to know where the doors are. So these intelligence assets that will monitor, those are things that are incredibly important beforehand. The other side of this, though, is that the United States has been operating in the Persian Gulf extensively since 1990 in the buildup to the first Gulf War in 1991 when we kicked Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. And we've been operating there ever since, and very heavily since, obviously, 2001 after the 9/11 attacks. What that means is we've had ISR assets in the region for, 35 years at this point. We have a very deep understanding of where Iran keeps all of their things. And we have a very deep understanding of how to go in. Sometimes this surprises people, but one of the jobs of the military, I actually don't understand why this surprises people, because when you think about it, a competent military, one of their jobs during peacetime is to make plans, to game things out, and literally sometimes they will play games. They're highly detailed. Simulations might be a better word than games, for any number of possible future situations. So, you know, do we need to defend Taiwan against China? Do we need to defend Vietnam against China? Is India and Pakistan going to go really hot? Is China going to do something weird that will affect Indonesia and Australia, or, you know, Japan or South Korea? Is North Korea going to invade South Korea again? There's all of these potential hotspots in the earth that the United States military simulates out and games out. So we have game plans. The thing that with the ISR assets and the American military presence in the Middle East for 30-ish years, we've been game planning this out for a long time. And in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, nearly the entire world was backing us against Al-Qaeda. That included Russia and Iran and China. Mm-hmm. But that stopped at some point. So we were flying a drone over Afghanistan. It was based in Kandahar. It was a semi-secret stealth drone, the RQ-170. It was the Beast of Kandahar was its name. And Iran hacked it. They got into the control signal and they took control of the drone and landed on a Iranian airfield and captured it, and then They claim they cloned it. I don't know how successfully they did that, but it's just as an example of how things started to turn. And so we've been gaming this out for a long time. So I don't know if I would necessarily see that ISR asset is now operating off Iran, because they've been doing that for 30 years. The big thing with the second carrier, that's a little more complicated than people say. The Ford that had been involved in Venezuela is due to return back to port. And there's another carrier, an older Nimitz class. I can't remember it off the top of my head, which one it was, that was preparing to deploy as the Ford was already been at sea for like 8 months. It needs to go home. But the next one was like a week away from being able to sail. So that's probably the biggest timing. Do they want a second carrier in the region? Is the Ford still, even this long at sea, is the Ford still capable of enough of being that second carrier? Or do they need the freshly repaired carrier off of the East Coast to go and do its thing? But yesterday I saw a report that the Ford had been off the coast of Morocco at the end of, I believe, Tuesday night. So it's probably getting pretty close to the Eastern Med. Whether it crosses through the Suez Canal or not is an open question. So that's probably the final piece if they're waiting for a second carrier, but they don't really need one, if that makes sense. So if you want to pull up any of those maps of the Middle East that I sent,
Sure.
Sometimes it's easier to understand what's going on if you've got a map. Probably the one with the U.S. bases on it.
Let me see here if I have the right ones. I don't know if I'm bringing up the right page here. Just let me get it up on the screen.
Now, while you're looking for that, I did read an article today that the American buildup in the region, in terms of airborne assets, that's not the right one. That's some of the naval assets that we have in the region. Should have been in that first email that I sent.
Okay, hang on. I'll just re-queue it.
I sent Rick, sorry, audience, I sent Rick a lot of stuff, and I apologize.
Okay. No, it's okay. So the very first one, right?
Yeah, and there should be a map. But I was reading an article that said that the American airborne air power buildup in the region is the highest it's been since prior to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. It isn't as big because we don't have the ground assets in the region. That's probably good enough. There's another map. This is the Strait of Hormuz. You can see, the reason I included this one is that Strait of Hormuz. You can see Saudi Arabia is on the bottom left. Iran is center middle top. And you can see that little point of land sticking up into Iran where the water does that big curve. That's the Strait of Hormuz. That's currently where Iran, Russia, and China are running naval drills, naval exercises. The Russian ship even stopped at Bandar Abbas, that port there. Those exercises, Iran closed down the Straits of Hormuz, and that is where a significant fraction of the world's oil supply sails through, because you've got all the Saudi ports, you've got further to the northwest, you've got Kuwait and Iraq. Of course, Iran has some oil exports, but all of the Middle East, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all of those Middle East oil states. A lot of the oil that we use every day goes through the Strait of Hormuz, so it's kind of a big deal. Now, right more or less in the middle of that picture, you see Bahrain and Qatar. Those are two of our biggest military bases. In Qatar, we have Al Udeid Air Base. In Bahrain, there's a big naval base there. There's another one in the UAE that's another air base, the United Arab Emirates. But you can see how close it is, where we've got Qatar is one of the biggest air bases the United States has. We built it up over time after 9/11. We started from bare sand, and now it's just a giant base. If you ever want to look up on satellite imagery, it's a big base. Can hold a lot of air assets. There's F-16s, F-35s, F-15s. There might or might not be B-1s. The B-1 bombers stage out of there regularly. But you can see how close it is. So if you're trying to base an AWACS there or a signals intelligence airplane there, every once in a while a U-2 will land there. We have drones operating there out of there all the time. So there's unmanned ISR assets like the Global Hawk and others. You can see that we've just been operating there and how close it is. And so we have all of this built up knowledge. I don't know if your viewers would be at all interested in the amount of air assets that we have in the region, but it's huge.
I'm interested. I'd like to know. Yeah.
Some of those pictures that I sent, I can talk about that. There's one with an aircraft carrier with 2 ships. I think it was on that list, bottom right.
Yep. Here we go.
So this is actually the carrier in the region. This is the Abraham Lincoln. If anyone cares, it's CVN 72. You can see on its deck, it's got F-35s, it's got F-18s, it's got some radar airplanes, AWACS airplanes, small ones called E-2D Hawkeyes. The 3 other ships, that front one is a Ticonderoga class cruiser with 122 vertical launch missile cells, and behind it are 2 Burke destroyers with 96 vertical launch cells each. Those and other areas, naval assets in the area, we have something like 600 Tomahawk missiles ready and locked and loaded, as you might say. So this is just 4 ships, and I think we have something like 36 ships in the region currently. That aircraft carrier will have roughly 75 aircraft on it. It will vary. The carrier air group will vary between 60 and 80 aircraft. So what's on it at any given time, I couldn't tell you, but they usually operate with 70 to 75 aircraft just normally. But each one of those aircraft with precision munitions it's devastating. If you can get a squadron of F-35s off of an aircraft carrier as stealth strike. One of the reasons this is important is I read an article today that the United Kingdom might deny America basing rights for this military action out of Diego Garcia, which is out in the Indian Ocean, is pretty far away. That would be mainly useful for like AWACS jets or B-2 bombers. It gets them a little bit further away from Iranian missiles. It's more of a safe base for those very high value assets. But when you have an aircraft carrier, one of the things that we say is that is, I don't know how many acres of land are on the deck of an aircraft carrier, but they're big. If you've ever been on one, they're huge. It's sovereign American territory. We don't have to ask permission. That's just part of America's military power. So when you see an aircraft carrier like that, it might be a little intimidating, and it should be. One of the things that Iran has said, the Ayatollah said recently, was, yes, America might have moved a ship. He's old, he has a weird accent, but
yeah,
he said that we moved a ship off the coast of Iran, but one ship only needs 1 missile, which is just silly. So you can see on the aircraft carrier, forget the escort ships, but just on the aircraft carrier, visible right here, you can see part of its close-in defense system. Near the bow of the ship, it has what they call a sponson sticking out from the hull. You can see a little white R2-D2 kind of a thing sticking up there. There's also something right next to it called a RAM. It's an short-range defensive missile system. Both of those are fully capable of shooting down enemy missiles. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit grainy there, but it's on the left side of the picture right there. You got that row of airplanes right on the edge of the deck, and then it's right below it. And so one of the other pictures I saw was an exercise that the Lincoln was running its missile defense systems. And you can see it shooting off one of its defensive missiles. Now on those, you can go to that, sure. Yeah, this is the Lincoln shooting off one of its defensive missiles that it has to protect itself against enemy cruise missiles, enemy drones, enemy aircraft. And what the carrier has on it are just the short range defenses. These are the ones that are going to operate inside of like 5 miles. The guns will operate probably inside of 1 mile, but the missiles have a bit longer of a reach. So just the aircraft carrier itself has a saturation point that if the enemy launched, I don't know, a half dozen missiles at the aircraft carrier at one time and from multiple different directions, you could expect the carrier to down all of them. I don't know what the carrier saturation point is, but it's got to be higher than 6. There's too many weapons aboard for it to be lower. If you go back to the other picture, this is why I'm not overly worried about Iran's defense. On those escort ships, you can see those hexagonal things on their superstructures. Those are the gigantic radars, part of the Aegis Area Defense Network ballistic missile defense system. Romania and Poland, by the way, have Aegis Ashore. That's basically you take one of these ships and you build buildings and vertical launch cells. It's what these escort ships would have, but just on land. And they're meant to be incredibly effective area defense. Those things can down enemy aircraft or missiles out to 200, 300 miles. They're incredibly effective. And like I said, they have all those vertical launch cells. So yes, there's lots of defensive firepower on here. The chances of Iran getting a hit are extremely low.
But they do have more military assets than Venezuela.
They do. But the problem with Iran is that they had, once upon a time, they had American backing before the Ayatollahs came over. They still try and run some of that gear from the 1970s. That's a measure of how poor they are, as they feel they still need that gear from the 1970s. There has been a rush to get Chinese and Russian defense assets, some radars, some missiles. But they tried to do that with Iran before the 12-day war last summer with the Israeli and the American airstrikes. It was obviously ineffective. They tried to do that with Venezuela. It was obviously ineffective. So I don't know if Iran is even capable of defending against a competent strike. That's why Trump is probably leaning on this, is that the military power we have in the region is vast and incredibly powerful.
So can we just rewind back to June for a moment? Because that's when Operation Midnight Hammer happened. And, Trump said that the nuclear program in Iran had been devastated, completely destroyed. Pete Hegseth, making great fanfare out of it. Wasn't that supposed to end all of this?
No. Well, they might have thought it was, but no. Any rational observer would say no. Now, did that hurt Iran? Yes. Did it hurt Iran's nuclear program? Yes. How much of an effect it had is still being debated. And we might not know until we have people inside Iran that are willing to share the details, because Iran's not talking about the damage they received. We've had some satellite imagery of their repairs, but we've also, like I said about Iran's defenses that were ineffective, one of the things that happened in June, because they're still trying to debate what it called, that single day Operation Midnight Hammer, I think they called it, was the American part of it. Mm-hmm. But it was at the very tail end of what they might be calling the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. And Israel just took them apart. They took apart all of their radars, their missile defenses. They destroyed some of their aircraft. It was pretty devastating. And those are, aside from the nuclear damage, the damage we did to their nuclear efforts, It's hard to replace an S-300, S-400 anti-aircraft system that costs $500 million a pop. And Russia is having problems even supplying their own military because Ukraine is going after them. Ukraine has destroyed something like 200 or 300 radar and or anti-aircraft missile systems in the last 6 months. So these are expensive assets. They take several years to build. Like I said, they're somewhere in the vicinity of $500 million a pop. They're really high value, low volume assets. So that might have actually been more destructive to Iran than the strikes on the nuclear facilities. If they still have the 60% enriched uranium, because you can't destroy that with a bomb, rebuilding whatever method they're going to use to further enrich that, or having the scientists capable of designing an effective weapon, those can be pretty difficult to destroy with bombs. So yeah, did we hurt their nuclear efforts? Yes. Did we destroy it? I would say almost certainly not. So short version to end the question.
And I'm of the view that it would be a really bad thing for Iran to acquire nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Very destabilizing. I wouldn't trust them with the weapons. So I
You-
certainly understand the efforts to
a homicidal religious fanatic in charge of nuclear weapons is probably something that no sane person on the planet wants.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why people like Russia and China are actually involved in these nuclear negotiations with Iran on the side of, maybe we don't need to have Iran with a nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So
does Iran, like after everything they've been through over the past year, does Iran really have very much to bring to bear here at all?
So the thing that Iran, good Lord, sorry, I've been thinking a lot about Ukraine lately. The thing that Iran is still a problem with is some of their more problematic things they've been doing the last 40 odd years since 1979 is supporting terrorist cells. Hamas, Hezbollah are two of them, but also the Houthis. There's some reasonable information that they might have started helping Al-Qaeda, at least unofficially at some point. So that has been their most damaging, the most dangerous thing that they've been doing, is supporting these terrorists. Now on the more structured side, in the last couple of years, they've been helping Russia because they've been supplying drones to Russia by the hundreds every day. And then they licensed some of their drone designs to Russia. Russia started building their own. And so these Iranian built and designed drones are going after Ukraine daily. They're hurting civilians, sometimes killing civilians. They're relatively inaccurate weapons, so they're not very effective battlefield weapons, but they're good at going against civilians. Sometimes the power plants are big enough that they're not very accurate thing. They can at least get more or less in the vicinity. So we have this circle of probability of where you think at least half of the weapons you launch will hit. This is how military folks think about how precise a weapon is. So something like the Tomahawk missile would be, you would expect at least half of the Tomahawks you launch to land within 6 meters, which is roughly 18 feet. It's better than that, but that's the kind of precision that the original Tomahawks, as designed in the 1970s, were able to achieve. The modern versions are much more precise than that, but it gives you an idea of how we think. These Shahed drones are more like 300 meters, which is big. 3 football fields, and that's the diameter. It's big. So it's a 600 meter. Sorry, that's the radius. It's a 600 meter circle. And so they're very inaccurate. But if you're going after power plants or electrical supply, or very large, physically large targets, then you can expect, if you launch 100 drones at that thing, you might expect 25 of them to hit, which that's going to do some real damage.
So just back to Iran, I don't like, what is it that is setting this off right now? Do we even know? I don't know. Like, why right now?
So Iran's been a bad actor for a while. And the history of Americans saying, yeah, we need to take out Iran is long. I mean, even a guy I respect back in the 2016 presidential campaign, John McCain, was saying, was it 2016 or 2008? Sorry, that would have been 2008. I am so sorry. So all the way back in 2008, John McCain was singing "Bomb, Bomb, Bomb, Bomb Iran," the old 1950s rock tune, right? Bomb, 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 bomb. Yeah. So it's been a pretty common thing. Trump he did not like anything that Obama did. So Obama had the Iran nuclear agreement. I'd like to say 2015, but I might be wrong on that date. But when Trump won the 2016 election, one of the first things he did was withdraw us from that Iran nuclear proliferation treaty, which kind of boggles your mind at some level. But he's been trying to, because critics have justifiably said that's one of his biggest mistakes. And he's been trying to recover from that. He's been trying to see, as I can create peace, and this is one of his, I can keep Iran from having nuclear weapons. But then when all the big protests started happening inside Iran, just huge nationwide, all provinces, all major cities, people turning out by the hundreds of thousands into the streets. And then Iran had that huge crackdown, which reliable reports, again, Iran's not telling us how many people their own people they killed, but reliable reports are putting it into the tens of thousands. I heard 36,000 is one number. Those are Iranian civilians that were killed by the Iranian regime in the protests. I think the official number is all the way down at 3,000, but this is, again, crazy religious fanatics running the state. So that was just in January. And Trump had that thing of, if you start murdering your own civilians and executing protesters, I'm going to go after you. And I don't think Trump is going to be able to back down from that. He put that red line down, and he's not the kind of person to back off from that kind of a thing. As much as I want to joke about Taco, I think it'll burn his ego if he doesn't do something after promising something like that.
Well, I have seen stories or reports of protesters saying, please help us now.
Yes.
Those kinds of messages coming out of Iran. I mean, I have to think that the United States has some hand in information warfare there as well, sending information into these certain groups of people who are out protesting as well. So there's no doubt some influence there. But yeah, the timing now, as a result of all of this and the protests, it seems they have to do something if they're going to support the people who went out to oppose the government.
And there's other factors. The religion of Islam has a 40-day mourning period, which I can't remember if I read that it just ended or it's about to end in the next couple of days. It's somewhere in that. I'd have to look back at it again. That's a factor, that now that they're out of the mourning period, some of the protests started kicking up again. And big ones too, not quite the hundreds of thousands in every major city, but it was tens of thousands in like a half dozen cities. So that's starting to kick up again. The other factor that we're looking at is the price and supply of crude oil right now is healthy. We have an abundance of crude oil. We're actually producing more than we actually use right now. The price is fairly low. The reason I bring this up is any massive attack by the United States on Iran will affect global oil supplies. Whether you're cynical about wars for oil or not, it's going to be an impact of any sort of conflict in that region. So the fact that the prices are low and the supply is high makes right now the least bad time to have a conflict in the region. And I'm of two minds of this, because the damage that Iran has caused to other people through terrorist groups, to the Ukrainian people via Russia, to its own people via oppression and thuggery and outright murder. It's one of those things. I can't necessarily argue with getting rid of the Ayatollah, but does it need to be now? Does it need to be like this? Because like I said, the United Kingdom might deny us basing rights. How many people are actually willing to follow us on this? With all of the other worries going on, we've got the China-Taiwan thing, you got Russia-Ukraine. We just had the Venezuela thing. Is right now really the right time to start something new? And
this is a big, you're touching on something very sensitive here, because it's making me wonder how deep the wounds are that Donald Trump has inflicted with all of the United States allies,
yeah,
UK, Canada. We see what's and the U.S. military is spread pretty thin right now, because you have the situation in Venezuela, which is still not really resolved, I don't think. You have the blockade off Cuba, so it looks like something is imminent there, because you have garbage piling up on the streets. There's not enough gasoline to even power garbage trucks, let alone move the population around. He's inflicting severe economic pressure on Cuba, so something's going to happen there too. You have this going on in the Middle East. How many fronts is the United States able to, control without some support? And if the UK is not there, I think, there's a problem.
Yeah, the UK is the UK denying basing rights is kind of a canary in the coal mine there. If you can't even count on the UK, which foreign policy America talks about our special relationship with the UK, it's really difficult to find two nations that are more closely allied than the United States and the United Kingdom. I can't think of one, but it's an incredibly close relationship. We share basically everything. And so there's also internal American dynamics here, where one of the things that Trump campaigned on in 2024, 2020 as well, and 2016, now that I'm thinking about it, was an end to foreign entanglements. And I was part of the military, the post 9/11 military generation. I understand the idea of, like, good Lord, how long is this going to go on? Do I have to do yet another deployment? We had American military members between 2001 and 2021, when we withdrew from Afghanistan. We had American military members that had deployed 6, 7, 8 times. And if you're in the Army, each one of those deployments is between 12 and 14 months. So if you're talking about 7 deployments in your military career, how many years is that? It's close to 8 years, maybe a bit more than 8 years of your life has been spent in Afghanistan in war. And so the military was tired. We've got equipment that, like Humvees, they're tired, they're worn out. Helicopters, tired, worn out. Ships overused, aircraft overused. And it was a big thing. And Trump was like, we need to cut down foreign entanglements. He was big on cutting down foreign aid. It was a money thing. How much money are we spending on these wars and these military engagements and helping other nations with just financial stuff? And so it was a big money thing. So all of these people voted for Trump. But now he's done the Venezuela thing. We're looking at the Cuba thing and the Iran thing. How many more things is Trump's voters going to stand for? And the answer is not much. His support in the United States is I've seen some measures as low as 32%, but that's probably an outlier. The Nate Silver polling average has him at 41% approval rating. It varies between 40 and 42 on Nate Silver's graph. That's his poll of polls. He combines all of the good polls together. But that's really low support. He's got lower support now than at any time during his first term, including like post January 6th insurrection. And he's got a midterm coming up in 2025. The opposition party, the Democrats, won all kinds of special elections, and not even by small margins. There was a state election in Texas that was an area that Trump won by some ungodly amount. But then it got turned around by like 26 percentage points, and a Democrat won the area by 10%. It's that level of rejection of Trump's message. And so with the election coming up in November and midterm elections, he's got a ticking clock. This also affects Ukraine, where if it doesn't happen by June or July, then it's not going to, if good things don't happen by June or July, he's in for a real drubbing in November. So there's all sorts of clocks on this, the oil, the amount of stuff we have in the region. Because if you deploy an AWACS or tankers to the Middle East, you're not going to have them elsewhere. If you redeploy the Ford that's been at sea for 7-8 months already and extend it yet again, then there's all sorts of things that are adding up here.
It sure seems like he's engaged in a lot of conflict for a president who says he's the president
who wants a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, it doesn't equate to me, but
yeah, there's all sorts of jokes going around that I probably won't go into.
Yeah, so let's pivot over then. Anything else on the Iran front, or
did you want to look at any of the other aircraft?
Sure.
You might not need to. You can scroll through them quick, maybe. I don't know how much of a gee whiz people your audience are for this kind of stuff. Some of these pictures are kind of gee whiz.
You mean pictures like this one?
Yeah, this is an F-35 operating off of the Abraham Lincoln. This is the C model that it has beefier landing gear and that tail hook, and it's got, you can't really see from this direction, but it's got bigger wings because it needs better low-speed flight characteristics to allow aircraft carrier operations. But it's incredibly stealthy. It carries all its weapons internally. It's got a sensor suite that we recently found out in the Venezuela action, that F-35s were actually part of what hacked into Venezuelan air defenses. They got into their radar systems and did several things. They either painted a picture on their radar screens as nothing was happening, nothing to see here, or they painted something completely fake, like there were airplanes over here, there were never airplanes over there. But the F-35s fulfilled one of their electronic warfare roles, which is cyber attack on Venezuelan air defenses. So when you look at this jet, you might just see a jet landing on an aircraft carrier with the Super Hornets loaded down in the background. But there's a lot to this jet. It's formidable.
Yeah, and I saw that Canada is not getting much attention, but is committed to purchasing 14 more, even though the review of the purchase of new fighter jets to replace our CF-18s is still proceeding. An additional 14 are now in the pipeline.
I mean, we can pivot to that quick because I think this is actually important to Canada. Trump's not going to be in office forever. If you commit to purchase an F-35 right now, you might see that like it right now in the spring of 2026, because these are long lead time items. The factory in Texas is cranking out about 200 jets a year. Canada is not the only customer. there's a lot of nations buying this jet. So if you order one now, you might see that jet in 2 or 3 years. So 2 or 3 years from now, Trump will be out of office or on his way out. So, and given his poll numbers, somebody else much better will replace him. So in terms of long lead items, worrying about dealing with the United States, well, you're not going to get your F-35s until Trump is gone anyway, even if you order them right now. The other flip side of this, so just in terms of Canada having effective jets, I think Canada should buy these. The flip side of that is I really do like the idea of Canada buying the Saab Gripens, not because I think the Saab Gripen is a good jet. It is a good jet, but it's not the F-35. The good part about that is the Saab deal includes a fighter production line inside of Canada. And we also know that Saab has begun work already on a Generation 5 or Generation 6 jet. And if you have a Saab fighter production line inside of Canada, that could transition into Saab's new jet, not the Gripen. Again, if you order the Saab Gripen with that production line right now, the production line hasn't begun construction yet. We learned this because we built a brand new F-16 production line in South Carolina. F-16s used to be made at the Texas plant that builds the F-35s now. We halted F-16 production there in 2017 and broke new ground on a brand new production facility in South Carolina just for F-16s. That did not see its first jet delivered until like 2023. Now, COVID was in there, but if you break ground on a brand new production facility, you might see your first jet 4 years after you break ground, maybe. So you're talking, there's long lead times here. So even if you make the decision now, you're talking years before you see anything.
Yeah, I understand that the first jets of the first 16 that Canada committed to are supposed to arrive somewhere later this year. But these additional 14 will take additional time.
Well, and the first Canadian pilots training on the F-35 arrived, I think, in Arizona was the facility they were training at. I might be wrong on that location. Somewhere in the U.S. Is the F-35 training facility. So most of the foreign pilots come over there. There's training facilities in Europe as well. And there's one in South Korea now that I'm thinking about it. But the Canadian pilots arrived at the training facilities in May of 2025. So almost a year ago at this point. They're probably, if they're not done with training already, because these were probably experienced CF-18 pilots already. If they're not done with training already, they probably will be soon. So you're just starting to see your first F-35 trained pilots.
So what are we looking at here?
This is an F-16. Speaking of F-16s, the reason I sent this is that what Iran has is massive numbers, and we're talking thousands of not very precise, but like I said, if you launch 300 of them at a big target, you can expect at least some of them to hit and do some real damage. And there's a lot of them. And one of the things that the Shaheds have is going for them is they're inexpensive. You can build one of those for less than $50,000 a pop, which might sound expensive to you and I on our personal finance level, but on this jet, not on the inset, but you can see on the wingtips of the F-16 there, you can see a missile. That's an AMRAAM missile. Each one of those missiles is about $1 million. So one of the things you don't want to do is shoot down a $50,000 drone with a $1 million missile. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So one of the things that we came up with on the inset, these are the old unguided 7.5 centimeter or 75 millimeter unguided rockets. They were just supposed to be massive, blanket an area of the ground with small explosive things. So if you have like 100 troops in an area, you launch a barrage of these rockets and they just kind of blanket the entire area. What they did though is combined with that inset, you can see underneath of the intake scoop, right underneath of the cockpit, you can see there's a little pod thing there. Is that blue at the tip? That is a laser guidance pod. Mm-hmm. And what they did on those unguided rockets is they added laser guidance to them. That's why they stick out a little bit from their launchers. The normal unguided rockets are flush. You can't see the tips, but they added in a laser guidance section. So these are now precision weapons, and they are used to go after enemy drones, low-cost drones. And these are not expensive. These are $20,000 rockets with maybe a $5,000 add-in. So these rockets are precise. They're great for air-to-air kills at short range out to 2 miles. And they're less expensive than the Shahed drones. And if you back all the way out, if somebody is doing the math on here, because you've got 4 of those 7 guided rocket pods on there, 7 rocket pod, you got 4 of them, and then you've got additional missiles on the jet. This jet, without using its internal cannon at all, can go after 50 targets, just one jet. So if you've got a swarm of 200 Iranian drones coming at you, you only need 4 or 5 of these jets to take them all down. So this was rapidly developed. It started about 2022, the rapid development of this, although the idea started earlier. It was only slowly working its way through the process. The rapid development happened after 2022. Ukraine has been using these to go after Iranian drones operated by Russia for about a year already.
Warfare has changed.
Mm-hmm. This is an AWACS jet. You can see how big that radar is on the top. One of the things that people don't necessarily think about is, well, they think the F-35. It's one jet. It's just got that radar in the nose. But these jets are designed to act in concert with other jets. And one of the things they act in concert with is this AWACS that has this giant radar on top. It's got 20 people inside looking at different kinds of screens that bring in different data streams, because now with the encrypted data links, they can actually see what the F-35 radar sees as well. And you can see underneath of its chin and on its sides, it's got extra antennas. There's more things on this jet you can't quite see from this angle. There's a lot in this jet. And it's battle space management. It can see 300-400 miles with that giant radar. These are starting to age out. We're starting to buy new ones with better radars, but these are still effective. And one of the reasons I think that we might go into Iran sooner rather than later is several of these started transiting to the Persian Gulf. Some of them landed in Crete. They departed RAF Mildenhall in the United Kingdom a couple of days ago. Where they end up, we're not sure yet. So,
yeah, I think Trump signed an executive order to prevent that giant antenna from picking up ABC and the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Now it's exclusively Newsmax and Fox.
Yeah, you can't watch the James Tallarico, Stephen Colbert interview either.
Yeah, banned for the military. What are we looking at here?
This is another electronic warfare jet, because one of the things you have to do is this is one thing that Russia never did. On paper, Russia should have done this to Ukraine in as quickly as we did it to Iran last summer or Venezuela more recently. Is you simply shut down enemy air defenses. One of the reasons the United States has an air force, and we split the Air Force off from our Army, because in World War II it was the U.S. Army Air Corps. We split off the Air Force, is we recognized that aerial warfare was its own battle space. And for other things to work, again, it's not just this jet or this infantryman or this tank. Everything is supposed to work together. For the tanks and the infantry to work as well as they can, you need to own the sky. And this is, along with the AWACS and the ISR assets and the F-35s, this is another one of those jets that helps you own the sky. You can see on its wingtips, it's got electronic warfare pods. It's got a big missile on the wing. This is what they call a HARM, which is a high-speed anti-radar missile. It sees the enemy radar, and it attacks the enemy radar. It homes in on the enemy's radar signals. So it basically uses the enemy radar against them. And then inside of that, you've got an even bigger, more high-powered electronic warfare pod. Inside of that, it's actually a fuel tank. It's a 400-gallon fuel tank. And then on the fuselage, you've got AMRAAM missiles. So this is a Super Hornet. It has been modified into a Growler, is what we call it. It's not a Super Hornet. It's an EF-18 Growler. It's a play on older electronic warfare jet names. That Prowler was what this replaced. But yes, it's at the end of the day, it is still a Super Hornet. It's got an internal cannon. It can fire the AMRAAMs. So yeah, it's still a fighter jet at the end of the day, even if it's got all the capabilities. These are the bases that I was mentioning before. These are just some of them. Al Assad I've been to. I've never been to Al Tanf, although I've known people that were working there. Ali Al Salim I've been to several times. Bahrain I've been to. Al Udeid I've been to. And Al Dhafra I've been to. So I have personal knowledge of what all of these bases look like. Al Udeid is huge. Yeah. And of course, the F-22. We know that there's at least half a dozen of those in the region. I think this is just a cool picture. With a possible exception of some of the new brand spanking new Chinese jets. This is the preeminent air superiority fighter. So if anything actually gets airborne, these would be taking it down. And just as a level of its stealth, you can see the weird color of the cockpit. That isn't actually gold. It's like a tin. It's an alloy of tin that coats the glass. And one of the things they found out when they were studying the radar cross-section of airplanes is just a glass cockpit and all of the weird funky shapes inside of the cockpit with the ejection seat and the control panels and the display screens were gigantic radar reflectors. And so if you coat the cockpit glass with this tin oxide, it means that nothing inside the cockpit's going to reflect. Just as a level of how stealthy these things are, they went down to coating the glass of the cockpit.
I think that's all the pictures in that grouping, I think. Was there anything else in there?
I don't know if your audience is interested in this. A lot of this is gee whiz. So
yeah.
But it might be informative just to understand. I mean, Canada's talking about replacing ancient CF-18s with F-35s. You're talking about 15 here, 15 there, maybe a total of 88 if you go with the original order from 22 or 23. I forgot when the original order was.
16.
What do you mean 16?
They committed originally to 16, I think.
Oh, no, there was an order in 2022 or 2023 where there was like an agreement. It wasn't a commitment, but it was an agreement to buy 88.
Yes,
they wanted to replace the entire fleet of CF-18s. But yes, the 16 here, 16 there, those are the actual firm commitments where, signatures were done and money changed hands.
Yeah, I do have pictures here I can bring up.
But just in terms of the scale of the military, so when the United States is talking to its allies about you maybe want to buy some military, and this is just another example. People don't necessarily think about a ship like this as being an incredibly impressive force projection tool, because what this looks like a merchant ship or a cargo ship, maybe somebody might say oil tanker, but this has the flight deck right in the middle where it can do the tilt rotor off sprees or normal helicopters. Underneath of that flight deck, it's got that giant deck space where it can start launching boats. And it's got bolt down spaces for various armaments. We've been working on vertical launch cells just like in a normal cargo container that you'd see on a ship or on the back of a semi truck. Where you can pop up and it can launch missiles out of it. You can bolt those down here. This is a special forces forward operating base is what we've normally been using these for. So This might or might not have been one of the ships that actually sent in the special forces into Venezuela. But this is the specific ship that is operating off of Iran right now. So we have a special forces hub command ship operating off of Iran right now. This was some of the ships in the region without the second carrier group. You can see the one carrier and some of the other escort ships. The bottom right is that Special Forces command ship.
Okay.
This was a location of the American aircraft carriers. So if you zoom in on the U.S. East Coast, I can tell you what the other carrier that was spinning up was. Maybe I can't. You got to go down to the bottom. Deploying next, it would be the George W. Bush. Is the Com2X is the, after its last deployment, things break on deployment, things get worn out, things start to rust. You just need regular maintenance like you would on your car. And so what they do after their deployments, they go back for 6 to 9 months to repair all of those things before they can go out again. And the George H.W. Bush is spinning up. That's the one that'll go instead of Ford. Anyway. This is an Iranian missile, originally of Chinese design. At one point, Chinese military gear was trash. But in the past, anything they put out in the past 15 years, I would hesitate to call it trash. It still might be trash because everybody builds a dud. But if it came out in the last 15 years out of China, there's a better than decent chance that it's going to be a good weapon system. The Chinese have supplied these to Iran. These are not supersonic in the strictest sense. Although their terminal guidance, they'll hit about Mach 1.4, but they'll cruise at subsonic speeds. This is probably a very dangerous missile. If I was a naval commander, this would be what I'd worry about. Iran doesn't have very many big ships, but they have a lot of these missiles, probably several hundred.
And that's the end of that grouping too. Okay, so were there more pictures?
Probably not of Iran. I'm kind of overloading your audience. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Let's take a little break then, and when we come back, we'll shift gears and we can talk about Ukraine.
Cool.
All right. Stay with us. More on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
They both look clean, but the guest list redacted, if you know what I mean. No files exist, just a little twist, nothing to see here. Move along, folks, the truth's in the vault with the dirty jokes. No names released, justice deceased to protect the victims. And Donald Trump, shh, don't say the name, you'll get dumped. They dance with the girls too young to vote, a private jet and a suicide note. One's in a grave, the other still tweets. The truth took a dive 6,000 feet. The cameras broke, that's not a joke. The guards were napping, the logs were gone, and everyone smiled like nothing's wrong. Nobody talks, just shadow walks. National security took the stage while justice quietly disengaged. We can't release the names to protect the victims. And also Donald Trump. Coincidence? Just dumb luck. Right? Another sealed file. That crocodile smile. We did our best, says the DOJ, while the truth just fades away. Another new spin. No one will win except the rich guys with gold ID cards and closets full of secrets behind steel bars. Just a little glitch, a billionaire's privilege. That's the sound of the case closed.
And I don't know if the case is closed. I'm honestly surprised to see that former Prince Andrew was arrested. With the way all this has been unfolding, I didn't think anybody would ever be arrested. And with all the flood of information, I just thought, how is anyone ever going to figure out what the truth is? But there it is, an arrest. And we'll see where it goes. Trump on Air Force One saying, I've been exonerated. We'll see about that. I think it's early yet. So
He says a lot of things.
yes, he does. Oh boy. What a mess. Anyway, back to the subject at
I will
hand.
just one thing, that the arrest of former Prince Andrew, he's no longer a prince,
Mhm.
has had a couple of shockwaves in the United States. And the common sentiment is something like, well, at least some country is arresting their powerful men over this, as a not too subtle hint that maybe the United States should start.
Yeah, I saw Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project make the comment. At least the United Kingdom, I think he said, still believes in the rule of law,
Yeah.
and the statement from the king saying we just have to trust that in the system and let the law. I'm paraphrasing, but let the law take its course.
Well, one of the deflections that the MAGA people in the U.S. are trying to do is like, but Bill Clinton's in these files. And the reply is, Bill Clinton doesn't have the cult-like followers, never did, that Trump does. So while I have been tempted by some conservative candidates. Like I genuinely liked John McCain in both 2000 and 2008. I haven't been overly attractive to American conservative nominees. But if Bill Clinton's guilty, they should arrest him. And I'm saying this as somebody that thought he was a pretty reasonable president while he was in. Not great, but reasonable. The last time the United States had a balanced budget was in 1998, 1999. Bill Clinton was president. So,
yeah. All I can say is 3 million documents. That's more than I can read. So,
yeah. Well, and that's not even it. I think that's like less than half of the actual documents. That's just what's been released.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on Epstein, but there's so much in the news right now that kind of annoys me and makes me mad.
Yeah. And it's, it all ties together. It has an impact on all of this and alliances and people, whether they support, institutions, whether they have trust in government, and whether they continue to support even Ukraine, because it can deteriorate or erode trust in everything.
Yes. And I should preface what I say next by saying I haven't confirmed this, but what I read sounded reasonable, and it seemed to add up that with the timing of Jeffrey Epstein's rise and his initial influx of money, there seems to be credible evidence that he was heavily involved in the Iran-Contra affair in 1986. And that had all sorts of weird ties to the former Soviet Union, of course, the Iranian regime, and then the weird rebels and governments in Central America. That was a mess. I don't know how many people even remember that anymore, but people went to jail over that one.
Yeah. That was the Reagan era.
1986.
Yeah. Yep. So where are we at with Ukraine? I know that they had another round of peace negotiations that just another round. And I mean, going around and around and around in circles, it just doesn't seem to go anywhere.
So I think with this, I want to start off with, because one of the things that Russia's trying to do, and I think they either have, I don't quite know how to characterize Trump's role in this, or Steve Witkoff's, or Jared Kushner's. Are they useful idiots for Russia? Are they knowing collaborators? I don't know. But there's a lot that Trump's doing that's pushing the Russian line. And when you say, oh, there's peace negotiations, is Ukraine going to accept these peace terms? And Russia's saying, well, yeah, we're putting out peace terms, and this is the gauntlet that Zelensky has to run. And it doesn't help that Trump is not helping. But people see, peace. There must be something going on here. But sorry, I made some notes. I need to pull them up for myself.
Sure.
So the negotiations are the sticking points are. This is kind of prelude to what I want to say. The sticking points are the captured territory that Russia has, the opinion that Russia has not only for is the Ukrainian government valid, but what Ukraine should look like in the future. It hinted they want it to look like what it looked like pre-2014, which is basically a Russian puppet state. And so there's the territory, what they want. There's Western security guarantees, and basically the future of Ukraine, obviously. But the sticking points are the territory gained, security guarantees, and what the government of Ukraine will look like going forward. Because it is true that Zelensky is in office longer than he was elected to be in office. However, the Constitution of Ukraine forbids elections during wartime, which means that Zelensky is still the popularly elected leader of Ukraine because Russia invaded Ukraine. if Russia had not invaded Ukraine, at least in their big invasion, because people sometimes forget that Russia invaded all the way back in 2014, because that's when they annexed Crimea and some other places. If Russia hadn't done huge invasion in 2022, Ukraine would have had another election. So I think that's another data point in why Russia thought this was going to end quickly. Mm-hmm. So the thing that we're looking at here is the Kremlin is discussing future elections in Ukraine, but they're trying to push the false narrative that Ukraine's under Zelensky is not legitimately elected. What they want before peace negotiations finish is they want more elections in Ukraine, which again would violate Ukraine's constitution. So that's what they're asking, is Zelensky to violate Ukraine's constitution. We might see, I've been hearing rumors that somewhere around the 24th is the date that I saw, that Zelensky might announce some referendums. They're not really elections, but they're kind of like an official poll where registered voters can go and officially register their support or opposition to the current government. It's not an election, but it would at least be a referendum. There's a good chance Zelensky's going to win that, because Zelensky has like something around 60% support inside of Ukraine. That's actually a low point for Zelensky, but when 60% approval is your low point, that gives you an impression on how popular he is. The Kremlin has more than once, so they're equivalent of our Secretary of State. Sergei Lavrov is their foreign minister. He said more than once, their negotiators have said the same thing, that the Kremlin is not prepared to accept any election results that would put into power a new government that is in opposition to Russia. The only election result that they would accept is something like what they had prior to 2014, which was a government that was under the thumb of the Kremlin. They basically took their orders from the Kremlin.
So they want an election, but they'll only accept
with the preordained
okay.
result.
It goes their way. Yeah. Right.
And part of the irony here is when they're saying that Zelensky is not a legitimately elected leader, Russia doesn't have a legitimately elected leader. They've had elections, but tell me when the last time Russia actually had a fair election, because Putin's been in charge since 99, 98. I'd have to look up the exact date he took over for Yeltsin. But he's been in power for a long time. They had Sergei Medvedev that was technically a president that took over for Putin. But before that election, because the old Russian constitution forbade Putin from serving any more time as leader, he changed the constitution before that election so that the office that Medvedev had been elected to would no longer be the head of the nation, that a different position was now the head of the nation. That's what Putin was now running for. And so while that happened and Medvedev was technically the leader, even though Putin was still in charge, they changed the constitution again to allow Putin to run again. So you can see how, they're looking for a preordained conclusion. One of the things that Kremlin is demanding is that Ukraine agree to territorial concessions. This includes not only the territory that Russia currently occupies, but also land that Russia has failed to conquer with military means. They want Ukraine to give up more territory than Russia currently occupies. So they want Ukraine to agree to territorial concessions before they want to lock them in. They want firm signature. This treaty is done. It's all wrapped up. It's done before they begin negotiations on Western security guarantees. And they've also stated that they're not going to accept any Western security guarantees. So you can see the goat rope that the Kremlin is trying to wrap up and call peace negotiations here. If you want to bring up, I sent you a Ukraine map, the overall Ukraine map. That's a great picture, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Okay. Is it in that grouping? Or?
It should be in that grouping, yeah.
Okay. This one?
Go back one. It should be all of Ukraine.
That one?
Yeah. So I don't know if you can get that all on the screen, but if you look at that red section, the yellow is what Ukraine liberated. So the first half of 2022, Russia managed to gain all of the territory that's currently yellow on this map. But starting the summer of 2022, Ukraine had its massive counterattack that regained all of that territory. So all of that yellow territory is land that Ukraine took back, liberated from Russian conquest. The amount in red is not surely changed over the last 2 years, except in like small amounts. I mentioned before on your show that the current pace of Russian advance is something like half the amount that the Battle of the Somme achieved in World War I. So you're talking static trench warfare in World War I, where they were measuring territorial gains by the dozens of meters per day. So if I gained 20 meters of land today, that was a good day. So that's the rate of Russian advancement. And you can see in Donetsk is one of those districts that Russia wants Ukraine to give up. Not all of that is red. So that's some of the territory that Russia wants Ukraine to give up. And it's just Russia hasn't been able to accomplish anything on the battlefield lately. They tried and tried and tried and tried in 2025 because Trump was now president. They were trying to change the calculus of the battlefield to have some sort of massive success, combat success that they could show Trump and say, look, we're going to win anyway, so help us make Ukraine give up. But they haven't been able to do it. It's been basically the same for at least 2 years.
So what of these reports of Elon Musk cutting Starlink access for Russia?
And I was going to go into that. I think I sent you one of those maps. I hope I did. So not only did Russia cut off, not only did Starlink stop serving because Russia was using, we saw Shahed drones with Starlink terminals on their tops. Go back. This is the cross direction. Did I not send you one of the east? I didn't send you any other maps.
This
I'm
one,
so sorry.
That was it.
That was
I
it.
think there
Sorry.
might be. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
In the southeast, if you go back to the Ukraine map, the big Ukraine map,
This one or the other one?
the other one.
Okay, there we go.
So you can see in the middle, just north of Crimea, there's that yellow section. Just to the east of that. So there used to be a big lake before Russia blew the dam a couple of years ago. So just like halfway between that yellow section and Donetsk, there's an area in Zaporizhia that you can see that big kind of there's like this weirdly colored thing just to the west of Donetsk. That Russia was trying to use as yet another, like, maybe Ukraine is weak, maybe we can make big territorial gains there. So Russia did gain some ground, but not very much. Once Starlink got cut, and more than that, Russia itself cut off access to Telegram, which was one of the primary ways that Russian soldiers were communicating with each other. And so Russia was in disarray. Their military couldn't talk to itself. So you remember what I was saying about Iran and all these different things where everything's meant to work in a concerted team. Everything's coordinated. Everybody's got their role. All the roles overlap and mutually support each other. Without communications, you can't even dream of accomplishing that sort of combined effort. And so the cutoff of Starlink and Telegram meant that over the last couple of months, Ukraine has gained back something like 200 square kilometers, 78 square miles of territory. This was stuff that Russia had had been going at, had gained somewhere in the last 6 months. So they hadn't really had time to dig in and form any sort of defensive lines against Ukrainian counterattack. But that's where Ukraine started gaining some serious ground.
See, this, I have to ask you, this seems crazy to me. How can a power like Russia rely on a US owned satellite system like Starlink and an app like Telegram for their soldiers to
Telegram was actually set up by a Russian, but yeah.
It just like it seems like it's totally vulnerable to hacking, and if you're relying on a US company to supply your satellite services, what would they ever do if they did have any kind of conflict with the United States? Or
well, and that's one of the things that, so how do you replace, because Starlink is thousands of low orbit communication satellites that you can triangulate off of and bounce off of, and you can do all sorts of things with that gigantic constellation of satellites. Russia was trying to replace it with what we call an aerostat, which is actually not a horrible idea, but it's a giant balloon that they're going to float to 20 or 30 miles altitude. But they only like had one of them. And if you're talking about line of sight communications, having one balloon 20 or 30 miles up versus a constellation of thousands of satellites that are 100 miles up with the curvature of the earth and line of sight, that one balloon really can't cover much territory at all. So you're right there. I don't know what they were thinking. We thought before this war that Russia was much better set up than they evidently are, because why on earth was Russia relying on American satellites to begin with? Why didn't they have their own military satellites? So it's a little bit hinky that Starlink allowed them to use it at all. That was a big success for Ukraine to say, look, you need to shut this down. They're using it to kill civilians. And if they're using your gear to commit war crimes, guess what? You are now complicit in those war crimes. So yeah.
Exactly. It blows my mind that Elon Musk would even allow them to use it.
Well, it's kind of a window on the moral depravity of Elon Musk that we probably don't need to explain. But yeah, I have my own questions about Elon Musk because his amount of drug use should have already disqualified him for security clearance, but he still has security clearance because he runs SpaceX. Yeah.
I guess he must be well paid for the services he's being provided to Russia.
Yeah. So that actually did have a big effect, but it's not the only effect. Did I send you I must have had an entire other Ukraine email that I never sent. I did. Let me send you some other pics quick. Because one of them I actually did want to talk about. Some of the other ones are maybe not as important, but this one, I there you go. I am sending it. All right, you should get it momentarily.
Okay. Just waiting for it to come through.
No worries. So yeah, communication's a big deal. Ukraine, so Russia has the ability to, because they've got the old command economy in the old Soviet model, where they can, like the command economy thing, you will build this. So if they come up with a design like they imported the Shahed design from Iran or some other things, they can order a whole bunch of factories to build this design. So that has the benefit of huge numbers if their economy is having problems. So those huge numbers are not what they used to be, but it can potentially have that benefit. On the Ukrainian side, this is a different picture. You can go back. There's a map that I finally sent that I thought I had sent earlier.
Okay.
A different map. Sorry, that is a map, but not the one I was talking about. So this is not that one. That's the map that I meant to say earlier. Those light blue sections are the Ukrainian counterattacks, and you can see how they're doing it. You can see there's that spot that is in between the two Ukrainian counterattacks that is now in danger. So any Russian troops in those places are now in danger. The one thing that I might mention about any of these battlefield maps is that the current conflict inside of Ukraine it's not easy to draw lines on maps. So any of these lines that you see, take it with a grain of salt. Those reds are not really under Russian control, and neither are the blues necessarily under Ukrainian control. And that has to do with the fact that all of these tiny little drones can have like a 20-mile range. So that's why I'm saying that it's hard to draw these lines, because when you have these drones that can operate 20 miles in either direction of wherever you decide to draw this line, now you've got conflict on both sides of the line, and does somebody actually control that territory or not? So anytime that you see a Ukraine map, understand that these lines are pretty fuzzy, and that these colors are kind of best guess. Now they're very good guesses because, like I said, Telegram and other social media sources, people post videos that can be geolocated, and you can say, look, yeah, we know they're there. So this was that direction that Russia was trying to advance in, and you can see some of the big Ukrainian counterattacks there. So on the innovation side, there's a picture of a drone that I sent. On the innovation side, because the advantage that Ukraine has is they've got 10,000 or more drone factories right now. In 2025, they built something like 5 million drones. They're set to double that this year. In the month of January, there was on average for Ukraine, there was on average 3 combat drone sorties every minute. So you had 3 combat drones launching every minute to go after a target. Something like 134,000 combat drones Ukraine used just in the month of January. This on the innovation side, because Ukraine has something like 10,000 makers. Each one of these factories has its own innovator. Some of them collaborate, but a lot of them are like, I've got this great idea, and they start going with it. This is one of the ideas that really took off, because you remember that picture of the F-16 where you had the $1 million missile, but then you had the new guided rockets that was an American idea. This is a Ukraine idea that does a similar thing. This, you can see, is a repurposed quadcopter drone, probably a 10-inch diameter. The 10-inch is going to be the diameter of the rotors. So for scale, each one of those 4 rotors is going to be like this. So this is going to be maybe knee-high, thigh-high in terms of the size compared to a human being. So it's a repurposed quadcopter drone, fairly inexpensive. One of those quadcopters is $800 for a really good one. With all of these modifications, it might be $1,200 or $1,500, so $1,500. And this is a drone interceptor. It's got the wings that it'll take off vertically, but it'll fly horizontally. And it'll go after Shahed drones. It'll go after helicopters, which I sent you that video. It's the United Kingdom just agreed to produce 5,000 of these anti-drone drones for the Ukraine every month. There's a whole bunch of these being produced inside of Ukraine, but the United Kingdom is now building them. Poland, I think, already agreed to build them. So this is one of the more recent innovations. And I talked about the money thing. Ukraine was having problems with air defenses because $1 million AMRAM is expensive to go after a $50,000 Shahed drone. But if you can have a $1,500 modification of a cheap quadcopter drone going after a Shahed drone, you can see where this is going, where you can build these by the tens of thousands.
So this is
This is the video of one of these drones going after a Russian helicopter, just to prove they're not limited just to Shaheds. I don't know if it'll play or not. Not. It's all right. It's kind of a cool video. There's a lot of combat video on Telegram. I've got a couple of sources that I personally know in Ukraine that send me stuff over Telegram. There's a lot. If you're ever interested, there's a lot. Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. That other map with all those red lines, we talk about how much Russia is attacking Ukraine, and they are. This was one of the nights. You can see the direction of the arrows is going away from Ukraine. These are Ukrainian long-range attacks into Russia, going after oil facilities. In the Belgorod region, that's in the top center of this map, they have been going after some power plants and some heating plants. The city of Belgorod has actually been out of power or heat for the last week or so. And they're mad. There's actually a lot of protests going on against Putin in Belgorod right now. But you can see how small that effort is compared to all the other ones, which are going after Russian airfields, Russian supply depots, railroad, but definitely oil infrastructure. December 2024 to December 2025. So just last December, there was a 34% reduction in Russia's oil revenue. That's different than the 50% reduction in their refining capacity. That's just straight up dollars, 34% down. And that's something like half of their government revenue. Just as a scale of what's going on, and people don't necessarily think about this anymore. We'll have to look at what the difference between the white lines and the red lines are. So sorry about that.
So when you're talking about these lines on the map, and in some ways they aren't entirely relevant because of what you just mentioned, the attacks on energy infrastructure, the way that's affecting the day-to-day life of people on both sides. Certainly in Ukraine, we're seeing that, heating homes, these are issues right in Kyiv that can be an issue, right? A problem.
Yeah. So that last picture that I sent with the woman and the infant, he's a toddler now. His name's Matvey, which in English is Matthew.
I think I have to go to.
The other email. I'm so sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. Let me.
A friend of mine, he was a combat soldier for about 16 months. A Russian rocket hit the building that he was sleeping in. He was pinned under a building for about 3 hours before the other people in his unit dug him out. So he didn't have to have anything amputated, but he has severe nerve damage in the lower half of his body. So he's not really effective as a soldier. His family was in the dark and without heat, and I recently got them a power bank. And one of the things these power banks have is an LED light so they can actually see. So this is his wife and his son. His daughter is off screen. But yeah, so I sent them a power bank because just having light is at night, and they're further north probably than you. And you know how long those winter nights can be. So just having light is a thing. But this power bank can keep their their mobile devices and even a small water kettle running. And he's hooking up solar panels to it, I think, today.
Yeah, and
but you can see who it's affecting. Little toddler who doesn't have heat or light.
That's what it comes down to, right? Is it's you see Jared Kushner and Witkoff going over there to engaging in these negotiations. They're trying to swing business deals, but these are the people who are really being affected. These are the people that have the most at stake, because this is about their life, their way of life, their culture, their country, their
Well,
sovereignty.
and Trump doesn't have any window on this. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He hasn't known the first day of need. And he's notoriously back on the 10th of November, 2018, the day before the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. He famously refused to visit the Bellawood American Cemetery. That's where the Marines at Bellawood earned their Devil Dog name. That's, some people say that's when Marines became Marines. It's holy ground to the United States Marine Corps. And he refused to go because it was a little drizzly that day. His chief of staff was a Marine, and he told his chief of staff that he didn't understand why these young men were willing to fight and die. They must have been losers and suckers. He just didn't understand it. So yeah, he called American service members losers and suckers. He doesn't understand what it means, why somebody would raise their right hand and say, yes, I am willing to stand between the children and the enemy. I am the person that you can count on to do that. And that's what the people in the military do. That's what they signed up to do. And that's what Ukrainian soldiers are doing. Russia came looking to conquer them, looking to subjugate their people, in some ways eliminate them, because they don't view Ukrainians as a separate people. They think they're just Russians that are acting badly. So there's going to be ethnic cleansing going on if they manage to take it over. And that's what Ukrainian soldiers are standing in between. They're standing in between the Russian, they call them orcs, from Lord of the Rings. They're standing between the orcs and their families. And it doesn't get any more simpler to understand than that.
Yeah. So
this is a Russian oil facility in Pskov, burning from Ukrainian attack. Russia funds most of its government and certainly its military efforts by the sale of oil to, among other places, Venezuela and Cuba, but also China and I think India. I don't remember where that stands. I don't remember if India actually cut off Russian oil or not. It was in flux for a little bit. But that's how they fund their war. And so as Ukraine innovated longer range drones, I believe FP1 is one of the most common ones now. It's still a propeller driven drone, but it's 150, 200 miles an hour, something like a 200-300 mile range. Serious piece of hardware, 80 kilogram warhead. It's a big thing. And it's guided. So it's got a man in the loop guidance. It's got a video thing where there's somebody that flies it into the target. This is Russia's ability to fund its government and its military going up in flames.
Today, I see, just before coming on live with you, Viktor Orban threatening to cut energy supplies from Hungary to Ukraine, I guess, unless he can. I just read it briefly, but he wants an exemption, or to take advantage of an EU exemption, so he can continue to purchase Russian oil for Hungarian oil refineries, while everybody else is trying to get off Russian oil because it's funding the war.
And this became critical because while some of the pipelines that were supplying gas and oil to Hungary were cut off, I can't remember the date, but finally the business contract ran out. So one of the big ironies of this war is there was Russian oil and gas flowing through pipelines through Ukraine to other people that were then paying Russia. And this included some people that were helping Ukraine. So people like Germany and the Czech Republic, and that people were sending money to help Ukraine defend itself. We're also sending money to Russia to in part help fund the attack on Ukraine. So it was this weird part of the war, but one of the remaining pipelines, Russia mistakenly attacked. So one of the pipelines that was supplying Hungary, Russia attacked the pipeline and cut off fuel to Hungary. They did it by mistake, because Hungary is one of their thorns in the side of the Western support for Ukraine. But Hungary's also got an election coming up on themselves, and it looks like the opposition to Orban might actually win this time. I'll believe that when I see it, because he's managed to tighten the clamps down on the nation, and so it's even. There's an argument to be made that Hungary stopped being a democracy a few years ago, but I'll believe it when I see it if the opposition party wins in Hungary.
Well, this just shows how things are not always as, cut and dried, black and white, one side versus the other. You have all of these strange ironies within warfare, where money is flowing and there's still business deals. And I see people, when they're making arguments going all the way back to World War II, for instance, and talking about American companies supplying, Ford providing Russia or Germany with vehicles and things of that nature, right? But there were
Henry Ford
connectivities. It was weird,
Henry Ford was notably anti-Semitic and pro-Nazi for most of the 30s.
Yes,
he shared that with a lot of people, so it wasn't just Henry Ford, but like Charles Lindbergh, the famous Lindbergh that flew Spirit of St. Louis, was awarded a Nazi medal that was pinned on his chest by Hermann Goering himself in I believe it was 1938. So within spitting distance of World War II.
Yes.
And so it gets complicated, but one of the other parts of Hungary is notably in World War II, Germany didn't really have a great oil supply, because there isn't a lot of oil or even coal inside of Germany. There's more coal, but they don't even have much of that. And so they need to get their energy supply from other things. There's a reason why Germany, the past 30 years especially, has been going really hard on solar and wind. Something like 50% of their power generation is now solar and wind, because they don't have fuel. Hungary is in the same boat. So one of the diplomatic efforts going on right now is, can we hook up Hungary to maybe a nuclear power supply from the West? These small modular nuclear reactors that have become more of a push lately. And so that's, at least somebody is thinking about how do we wean Hungary off of Russian oil? Finally, we're almost 4 years in.
Yeah. We have, I think, another photo. We saw that. We already looked at that. And what was this?
Okay.
I don't think we explained this.
You look top left, kind of the top left quadrant, you can see Pokrovsk. This has been the push for Russia. And it looks like the scale is covered up by the Maverick Media logo in the bottom right. But roughly the diameter of that Maverick Media circle is 3 kilometers for scale on this map. And I can see 2 Maverick Media circles. Is that what you see?
Yeah.
So the top one is over what used to the city of Avdiivka. And I've mentioned this on your show before. So I didn't realize how close in date we were. But on the 17th of February, 2024, so a bit more than 2 years ago, Russia managed to finally capture Avdiivka. Since then, so 2 years and 2 days, they've been pushing on Pokrovsk. And if you can think about that circle as 3 kilometers, you're talking maybe 30 kilometers, maybe 40 from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk. This is the rate of Russia's advance over 2 years. 30 kilometers over 2 years. So you're talking meters a day, maybe. And if you look at the map, Pokrovsk is not taken yet. It's a little bit hard to see, But in the white section, there's a shaded region. The northern part of Pokrovsk is still in Ukrainian hands. Now, I did mention earlier that these lines on a map are really fuzzy. So as far north as Verdansk, you can see at the very top, there's been Russian drone activity going after Ukrainian targets. But, that same distance on the other side, you can see some of the towns like, the Horodivka right in the middle of the map. There's been Ukrainian drone activity in that town that I've seen lately. Just so you know the level of fuzziness on these lines. There might or might not be ground soldiers in those areas, but there's combat going on. Just as a thing. But yeah, Ukraine is regularly targeting Russian soldiers in that supposedly red Russian occupied part of Pokrovsk. It took them so long to get to Pokrovsk, 2 years, that Ukraine knew this was coming. They've been making Russia bleed. That's another subject. In the months of December and January, Russia lost more combat soldiers than they were able to put through basic training, just as a measure of how many soldiers Russia is losing. It's just a meat grinder. There's between Avdiivka on this map, you probably have 200 to 300,000 Russian casualties. Just stunning amounts of carnage on the battlefield. Ukraine has been doing this by trading land for Russian blood, Russian bodies, Russian fertilizer for Ukrainian sunflowers in the joking part of it. Just the staggering incompetence of the Russian military, the bloodbath of this war. Another example of the innovation, Russia was using meat waves. They'd send 100 poorly trained soldiers, if you want to call them that. They were in Russian uniforms anyway, towards the Ukrainian positions so that the Ukrainians would fire on those Russian soldiers and kill them. But in the process, the veteran soldiers in this much smaller numbers would watch where the Ukrainians were shooting from. And then after they were done killing 100 or so untrained Russian soldiers, the veterans would slip the flanks and try and go after the Ukrainian positions. It didn't take long for Ukraine to catch on to this, that their defensive positions were being hit by very small forces, like a 3-4 man team of Russian veterans. To as soon as they were done shooting, it's what we call shoot and scoot in the United States military, where as soon as you've got one group of people or one tank or whatever you've got defending, is one thing, but it's got 5 or 6 prepared defensive positions. So when the meat wave comes in, you're shooting from one thing, but as soon as the meat wave stops, you scoot, you shoot, and then you scoot, you leave and you go to a different position. And one thing that the Ukrainians learned, that, veterans are going to be attacking our defensive positions soon. They'd slaughter the meat wave, and then they would retreat to a position that could shoot at the position they just scooted from. So when the Russian veterans were coming in on their former position, they take out the veterans. Now they're not even doing this with live troops all the time. They've got ground robots that they might be 500-pound ground wheeled vehicles. They'll mount a heavy machine gun on it, and they control it just like you would with a drone, sometimes using video game controllers. And they've got 5 or 6 prepared positions with those ground drones. So there's not even a Ukrainian person in those, and Ukraine is watching Russia try to assault these drone things. Yeah, it gives you an idea of how Ukraine has been able to get such an unbalanced slaughter ratio, and why Russia has lost so many troops, versus the Ukraine just hasn't. Ukraine's paid. They've lost a lot of soldiers in the last 4 years, but not like Russia.
So I've seen, I think today, Sweden coming up with another 1.4 billion in funding for this. war effort. And
I think Europe generally just came up with another 90 billion. That was everybody together.
yeah.
Like I said, the Brits just agreed to build 5,000 of those drone interceptors every month.
So the concerns that were present when Trump took office and the questions surrounding whether the U.S. would continue to support this, and then it evolved into the United States supplying weapons, but the funding coming from basically Europe and Canada to a smaller degree. I guess this seems to be working for Ukraine.
It's not ideal. What I mentioned, what I laid out or attempted to lay out, the vast scale of the American military power that is now arrayed against Iran, and that's just naval and some air force. Doesn't have any of our Army or Marine Corps really in any real numbers. The Americans are still the game in town for military hardware, military just power in the American military, but also our industrial base. But we found ours wanting as well. We've been grossly expanding like our artillery shell production that we talked about probably a year or even more longer ago. The United States was only making or capable of making 15,000 artillery shells a month. And there were some days Ukrainian was shooting off 30,000 artillery shells a day, and they could have done double that. So we've greatly expanded artillery shell production to something like 200,000 a month, just huge amounts of increase. But with Trump in power, it's a little bit different. About 14 months ago, it would have been October of 2024. I was in Ukraine as part of a joint NATO NGO delegation that was led by a Norwegian colonel. And at that point, Trump was doing well in the polls. It was October 2024, right before the election. Trump wasn't guaranteed to win, but there was a good chance he would. So we had been planning that for the past several months. And the idea was that we would be attempting to Trump-proof military support to Ukraine. It was led by a Norwegian colonel representing NATO, in part because we wanted to get European nations in that loop. We visited drone manufactories. I visited 4 different frontline units in the Donetsk region, drone operators, some of them. So it was an interesting trip. And there has been significant effort for a long time in the attempt to get more help coming from not Ukraine. The other part of that, because while the Norwegian colonel was leading it, I was already retired. I was not a military person at that time. I was a civilian. But I was representing an international group of engineers and drone pilots and otherwise interested parties that were coming up with drone innovations from outside of Ukraine. So I mentioned that I visited drone manufactories and I met some of their innovators. We brought some of our ideas, our design ideas to them. We listened to what they did, and we did a whole lot of, oh, wow, that's really cool stuff. That's a great idea. And holy cow. So it's an interesting cycle, just divorced from all of the horror, but this has been a big effort.
Anything more on the Ukraine front before we kind of bring this thing home?
I had something in my mind, and now it just left.
Well, let's take another little break, and then we'll come back on the other side and just kind of sum this up, and you can gather your thoughts, and then you can make sure that you touch on anything that you feel is important. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring Mike back in, and there you are.
Oh, and thanks for
Did you remember?
letting me gather my thoughts, because I did actually. So the thing that I wanted to mention, I made the mistake of looking at the chat. So sorry if people think I'm a know-it-all, but this is what I've been spending a lot of my time on the last 4 years. So, and I spent 22 years in the Air Force. So just saying.
Just ignore them. They want Canada to become the 51st state.
Oh, good Lord.
And other things.
I don't recommend that. I mentioned the thing about, this isn't what I wanted to end with, but I mentioned the thing about one of the advantages of Ukraine is that they've got all of these 10,000 different spots for innovation, and they can come up with some honestly really great ideas. Like the genius in the innovation cycle is astonishing. One of the things that used to make America great is that we used to support our friends. And one of the things about our friends is they can do things their own way in their own time and using their own creativity to come up with stuff that we never would have. And by that relationship, we make both of us better. So don't become a 51st state, stay Canada. I as much as I do love my country, I love the idea that we have allies out there that have their own answers, and sometimes it's really cool. So,
Yeah, and no matter what Donald Trump does, we'll always be allies.
well, let's hope.
I think so.
So one of the things I wanted to leave you with, I don't know if you wanted to put up that picture of the kid or if that's already in people's heads, but in World War II, the Soviet Union was in the fight, if you don't count the joint effort with the Germans to conquer Poland. The Soviet Union was fighting Germany from June 22nd, 1941 through May 9th, 1945. That was, by most counts, 1,418 days of war. A lot of days of war, 1,418 days of war. And we think about World War II as this huge mega conflict. We passed 1,418 days of Russia's big invasion, I believe, on the 12th of January, 2026. So we're already more than a month past it. So we are already in this conflict longer than the Soviet Union was fighting in World War II, just for the scale of it. And you've got these kids. This kid's only 2 years old. All he's known is war. Now he's too young to remember, but you've got kids that's all they've known. You've got this massive impact that's going to be with us after this. Why haven't we not stopped it? Trump needs to push back. Everybody needs to push back against Russia. Just the fact that we're well past World War II levels of massive conflict should be sobering to everybody.
Because he's not on Ukraine's side, and that's the problem.
Well, I think despite himself, he is actually hurting Russia. I know I wanted to end on the other thing, but with going after Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran, these are all Russian allies. They are all either purchasers or conduits for Russian oil. Iran was a conduit. Russian oil would go through the Caspian Sea from Russian ports to Iranian ports, get transported across Iran, and then go from Iranian ports to places like India and China as one of the routes for Russian oil. So despite himself, Trump will be hurting Russia. I don't think that's his intent, but that is one of the effects.
Well,
it's worth.
Here's how I see it. As much as he seems to have an ally in Russia, I just see them as a bunch of gangsters right now, sitting around tables making deals. But the problem is, when you're dealing with gangsters, there's an old saying: "There's no honor among thieves."
Well, and it's one of those things from the outside of the gangster thing where there's no talking and reasoning with these people. There's people that you can talk with and reason with and make deals with, and then there's people you have to stop. And Putin is one of those people you have to stop.
Yeah, and there is irony here too, because I was talking about Canada, 51st state, all this stuff, allies. I don't know if you're familiar with the bridge issue here that Trump is
is
trying
that
to
the one
down.
that? Yeah, just read about that last couple of days.
Unbelievable. He's trying to delay or stop the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge.
Was that Michigan?
Yeah, brand new bridge just an hour from here. I was down there today.
That's where you went. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And I didn't go to the bridge, but I used to live there for 10 years. I know this issue inside and out. Canada paid for the damn bridge, the whole thing.
Really?
Yes, we paid for the whole thing, $4.7 billion US, I believe.
Okay.
And he's like, it's not a fair deal. We need to own half of it.
That's the doggone.
Yeah, but Michigan already owns half. Like we gave the US side to Michigan, so you already own half of it, and we paid for it. And
this is so there's a certain category of voters that Trump won in 2024 that put him over the top. And a lot of those in the middle, they don't care about Trump's MAGA BS. They don't care about, any of the racism or anything like that. They wanted economic stuff. They wanted manufacturing. They wanted a lower inflation. It was all about their grocery bill and their pocketbook. That's the extent of their support for Trump. And when Trump goes after things like that with his tariffs, there's a Federal Reserve that's kind of our central bank that recently put out a study confirming that 90% of the cost of tariffs were paid by American citizens. And it was probably higher than that, but that was a firm number. And there's a lot of those voters that put Trump over the top that are just utterly disgusted with him right now. And this bridge is just one shining example of that.
Yeah, and a shining example of corruption, because right before he came out with the statement, well, because Matthew Maroon, who owns the existing Ambassador Bridge, which is now nearly 100 years old, built in 1929,
it needs to be replaced.
He met with Howard Lutnick.
Of course he did.
And he had been running a campaign for years to try to stop the construction and the opening of the new Gordie Howe Bridge, which will run in competition with the existing Ambassador Bridge. So his toll revenue will be cut probably in half or by more. And then after that meeting, because he's been a big donor to Trump and the Republicans, he ran TV ads trying to stop the bridge. And then Trump came out and said, no, that's it. This is a bad deal for us. And now he's trying to stop it. But this is a sidebar. The point that I'm kind of making here is, again, here's irony, because I'm trying to build bridges, keep our relationship alive with, the United States through you and others, right? And I believe in freedom and cooperation and building things up. And here's this guy, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, he's back just with Putin. Instead of opening bridges, he's trying to shut them down, and he's building walls again.
I didn't think of how much of a metaphor that this was.
Yeah. Blows my mind. And yet in 2017, he stood next to our then prime minister, a different prime minister at the time, and praised the Gordie Howe Bridge. And
don't expect consistency from Trump.
It's like, did you forget you were even there? But it's amazing what happens when a billionaire meets with Howard Lutnick, and then Lutnick whispers into the ear of Trump and says, there's a lot of money on the line here. We could really screw those Canadians over, or whatever he said. I don't know. But there is an investigation being opened now into that meeting. So we'll see where that goes as well. But,
there's a lot of internal American pushback against Trump. And a lot of it's playing out in the courts and even on the streets right now. But it's going to play out in the election in November. So we'll. Yeah.
Well, there was lots of benefits to Michigan, to the United States, by having that border crossing open, trade back and forth, everybody making money, everybody prospering, and let's hope, Mike, that we can get back to building bridges and opening them instead of building walls. And with that, I just thank you again. For coming on here tonight, because that's what we're trying to do, right?
Sorry to overload your viewers with pictures.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right, stick around after this. I'll chat with you when this concludes, but I'll be back tomorrow night, folks, 7 p.m. Eastern on the flip side. See y'all then, Mavericks.
We watched the old wall crumble, we heard the freedom's call, but now it's rising higher under Putin's shadowed thrall. From Ukraine's fields to Moscow's streets, a cold divide begins to creep. A world of fear where truth is bent and promises are sold too cheap. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. All in all, we're calling Putin's fall. We don't need their blind instruction, we've seen the lies unfold. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. He speaks of glory of days long past, where all would kneel before his cast. With tanks and threats he stakes his claim, while silencing those who dare to blame. Propaganda clouds the mind, we don't need no education, blind to the bloodshed and the strife, where Putin's dreams cut deep like knives. Can't you hear the children cry? Can't you see the tanks roll by? In Putin's world where truth is broken, we're just pawns in the lies unspoken. A wall of fear, a wall of light, where freedom fades into the night. We stand upon the edge once more as Cold War ghosts return to life. They tell us not to question, to walk in shadowed lines, but we've seen the fall, we've felt the cold, we know the weight of all their crimes. Ukraine's cries, a world denied, a broken bridge that's left behind. In Putin's quest for power's throne, they're building walls we can't condone. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. All in all, we're trapped within his thrall. We don't need their false direction, we see through the stories they've sold. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. So if we rise, if we resist, we break the walls they built like fists. For in our hearts we're
where hope is strong, there's strength to fight against the wrong. But if we fall, if we concede, remember what the future needs. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. So if we rise, if we resist, we break the walls they've built like fists. For in our hearts where hope is strong, there's strength to fight against the wrong. But if we fall, if we concede, remember what the future needs. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.